My Chemical Romance song leaked, and we gotta talk about it because apparently it's from an album that didn't leak.
My Chemical Romance are holding an album, MCR5, hostage. And this is the proof that we needed to know that we are being misled, led astray by our leaders. Rumor is the band started working on a record called The Paper Kingdom after their Danger Days album was slated to be the band's 5th album, aka MCR5.
Fill me in on the lore. I need to know everything. What's the story?
Does that sound as hard as the Black Parade? It don't.
It does to me. You gotta feel like even if they do release this album, like the idea that it would even come out with like the same title, like if they released a 5th, like it's just like an impossibility, right? Like it would never happen. We lost a great title.
The Paper Kingdom used to be referred to as MCR5 back when the album was being conceptualized and planned, but after the album was scrapped and MCR broke up, the placeholder name MCR5 kind of transformed into a reference of any future release that the band might release.
Right.
MCR5 does not mean the Paper Kingdom. I think everyone sort of moved on from the Paper Kingdom being a thing until recently, and we'll get into why. Various interviews over the years have cited that the nature of this album was very dark and emotional as one of the reasons why it was ultimately not completed.
I mean, it makes me sort of like slightly disappointed because like a dark and emotional album from My Chemical Romance sounds like an absolute fucking
heaven
barn burner.
Right.
Because that's like their best fucking albums.
So let's get into a timeline, Sam.
Let's get into the timeline, Marcus. November 22nd, 2010.
Danger Days is released.
I remember like it was just yesterday, Marcus.
14 years ago. January 2012, obviously 2 years removed from that release, an interview with Frank on Big Day Out. MCR is in early stages of figuring out their 5th album. February 2012, a month later, Frankie Arrow and Ray Toro interview with Noise 11. MCR built a new studio to record their 5th album. May 2012, a couple months later, Frankie Arrow interviews with The Aquarian. Frank confirms that the writing is going well and that they're about a month away from starting to record that 5th album.
This is insane. I didn't know they were this close. I didn't know we got this close.
Los Angeles Kings, a hockey team, defeat the New Jersey Devils and win the Stanley Cup. This is June 11th, 2012. Gerard Way notes this day as the day MCR wrote Fake Your Death. And I quote, "What was not so obvious at the time was that the song was and would serve as a eulogy for the band, though I should have known it from the lyrics. I think internally I did, as I felt an odd sense of sadness and loss after hearing back the words on top of the music. I also felt a strange sense of pride in how honest it was, and cannot remember a band recording a song of this nature being so self-aware. Ending felt like something honest, and honest always feels like something new." March 23rd, 2013, the big one here, My Chemical Romance breakup.
Yeah, my 9/11.
Which is ultimately why we never got to hear The Paper Kingdom. It's why we only got to hear one song previously from that studio session, and it's where we sat for a while. 5 months after that breakup, in October 2013, Gerard Way, in an interview, mentions TPK and being in a bad headspace. And I quote, "I fell back into a lot of old habits because it was easy because I felt in control. I wasn't in control at all, and then after that climbing out of it, it got worse. It got worse because I became even more paralyzed and more depressed, and I started to work on a record that was a concept record about a group of parents in a support group because they all lost their children in a horrible way."
This is going to sound terrible, but I'm foaming at the mouth. Like, I want this so bad. I mean, I guess what he's telling me is that, like, even if I got this record, I would have been disappointed on it on the basis that he thinks he did not deliver.
So early 2014 interview with Gerard, he reveals officially that the album was going to be called The Paper Kingdom, notes that someday he might want to revisit The Paper Kingdom in a new format such as a book. Quote, "So that my chem record that didn't get made, it was really, not only was it really dark, I was basically finding anything else to do besides write music. It's like I cared what the songs were, but it's like it's going to be a bunch of dark stuff, and we're going to build costumes and stage sets, and it's going to be this storyline about a support group of parents who are dealing with the loss of their children. So they make up this story about the children all being missing in the woods and fighting this witch, and that was what it was about. It was called The Paper Kingdom. There may be a time in my life where I want to do The Paper Kingdom, and maybe it's a book, or maybe it's something else."
No, it still has to be an album. It still has to be an album. We have to all of the stars have to align so that Gerard Way is ready to go and make an album that is this album, because the concept is so strong, and I think it would be great for music.
So that specific context of like these kids that are dead but their parents are like giving them this new life in a story of them fighting a witch in the woods, and that's the Paper Kingdom. Like, that is
incredible.
A hook for me.
You can't be cooking this hard and then just suddenly just shut the oven off and walk away. Like, I'm sorry, you have to do this for the people.
September 26, 2022, a user called Excalibur leaks song snippets from 3 songs that were intended for TPK, with each song copyrighted with the leaker's username embedded on top of the snippets.
Leakers give themselves such fucking stupid fucking names. Like, you are not that important.
This on YouTube, by the way.
You just leak shit. It's actually kind of like grimy.
Those tracks, Dark Cloud, Witch, Wake Up. This user lists the songs up for sale for $10,000. That's later removed and replaced by a best offer line.
Trashy.
September 27th, a couple days later, fans briefly theorized that the leak is an elaborate release hunt by My Chemical Romance.
If only.
These are copyright stricken, and leaked snippets are deleted / removed by official sources.
I also think that copyright striking is also a little bitch move, so there's few winners in this.
Well, the copyright striking adds validity to it being a real thing.
That's an incredibly good point. You're right, yes.
And that's sort of like where these things ended and went dormant for like a year or two, and now we're in 2024, and it's July 4th. A song entitled Witch is leaked. And a really important note here, Summoning is the promo video for when this band initially returned. That was a re-uploaded video because initially it was released with a song clip that was removed. Fans would later identify it as the first notes of Witch.
Did they decide to bank it because they wanted to do something more with the song than what they could have done at the time with this pre-release promo video? Maybe. Is the Paper Kingdom still alive?
If it's dead, then why is the band sort of using components of
the problem is that you can never
capacity?
say for sure if they just changed their mind and decided they didn't want to use the thing that obviously they own and could use for whatever they wanted to.
Also, you hear all the time about bands writing 200 songs for an album, and then obviously it only gets 15 tracks on it, but you rework something. 2 more snippets get released a day later. That's the Wake Up demo and another demo for Foundations of Decay. So at some point we're starting to get a full picture of what this is. And it all sort of leads into like what's ultimately apparently a potential track list. You have tracks called like Dive. You have another one called High Hopes, which apparently they sold off to Brendan Urie. Birthday Girl, Louder, Paper Swords. Not that I've heard it, but which has this real movie original soundtrack energy to it.
Score music.
Which sort of aligns with like the vision that Gerard may have had for this.
He's writing a score for this massive story that he sort of like created in his mind or on paper in theory.
And again, we did technically get MCR5 in some capacity in those 4 EPs that culminated in a full album.
I just think so much of this is like knowing its existence. Nothing about Hearing Witch for me makes me feel like, oh goddamn, I needed this. But it's knowing everything that like could have been now with all the context in the background that just makes me like want to pull the hair out of my head and fucking scream. Another kind of fascinating thing is Foundations of Decay is in no way part of the Paper Kingdom.
It was never included as part of the Paper Kingdom writing sessions. They apparently wrote that song in 2022.
Okay, show me the metadata and then I'll believe you.
Show me the metadata.
Show me the metadata. Where's the fucking metadata on this one, all right? They can't be trusted.
Right.
My chem has been up to devious things.
2 years since Foundations of Decay. All they've got on the calendar this year, I think, is When We Were Young Fest.
Do you think any member of this band felt good about the Paper Kingdom and wanted to release it? Like, I feel like we don't have all of those perspectives.
Mikey Way probably felt fine.
It's impossible to say. I feel like it's hard to really get a vibe for this band because, like, they're not people who are just on Twitter all day, like, chatting away about absolutely everything or posting, like, Instagram stories.
I think post-hiatus, it's been so hard to get any sort of information from this band.
Right, but I think it's intentional. Like, I don't think they want to be, like, sharing their lives in that way.
This ends up being a comic book 5 years from now.
I say we get the album. I say we get some form of the album. It may not be called the Paper Kingdom. It might not have the exact same story, but I think we get some aspect of everything that exists here. I don't know. It's incredibly hard to say with this band. It's incredibly hard to say because you really thought we were gearing up for like an explosion of My Chemical Romance, but then it feels like they've just kind of gone quiet all over again. I don't know, but it's exciting. And I think it's crazy that like My Chemical Romance is still like the kind of band where something like this could happen.
It's still a conversation.
The way that like Paramore and like Fall Out Boy can like dominate headlines constantly because they are still active, I don't think that they quite have like this level of reverence that happens when even the smallest modicum of My Chemical Romance makes its way into the fucking world.
Sure.
Which is kind of crazy. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Bye.